Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Animal Legal Defense Fund's Animal Law Academy. My name is Megan, and I'm one of our events associates. I'm so happy that you're able to join us. Today, we will be discussing Lobbying 101, How to Advocate for Animals. Before we get started, a few housekeeping notes. We will have a brief Q&A at the end of the presentation. To submit your questions at any time, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, and we'll try to get through as many as we can. Joining us today is Strategic Legislative Affairs Manager, Kathleen Schatzmann. Kathleen has been a successful leader in animal protection with over 15 years of government affairs and public policy experience. She has successfully managed numerous animal protection initiatives, working in cross-functional roles to create innovative practices to overcome campaign objectives and challenges. Thank you, Kathleen, for sharing your time and wisdom with us today. I'll pass it over to you.
Well, thank you, Megan. And excuse me, I would like to welcome everyone to our Lobby 101 presentation. We are so glad that you could join us today. The purpose of this webinar is to walk you through the basics of the legislative process and provide best practices when engaging policymakers to effectively lobby for animal protection legislation. And really the first question we have to ask and review is why? Why work on legislation? Well, animals can't vote, but that doesn't mean that they shouldn't have a voice in the political process. You can give animals that voice. Here at the Animal Legal Defense Fund, it is part of our mission. We advocate for laws that protect the lives and advance the interests of animals through the legal system. And we oppose legislation that would be detrimental to animals' well-being. It goes without saying that the legal system is based on laws, which makes enacting strong animal protection laws an essential part of the process. It is the foundation for enforcement and, when necessary, litigation, which, as many of you may know, happens to be one of our specialties. So that is the why. And here comes the how. We're going to start with the varying levels of government in the United States. We have our local governments, state governments, and the federal government. Local consists of your municipality, be it a town, a city, a borough, or a parish. And 48 out of 50 states also have counties, which is a step above a town or a city, and a step below the state level, but it's still considered local. You can contact your town's council members or the county commissioners to pass an ordinance, which is the local law. There's been such success on this level to enact measures such as puppy mill bans and bans on circuses and traveling acts that use wild animals. I hope you'll stay tuned for our next upcoming webinar that will focus more on local ordinances. Next, we have our state level governments, which are known as the legislature, the state legislature, the General Assembly, or the General Court. All states, except for Nebraska, will have a bicameral, meaning you have two chambers, a House and a Senate, where Nebraska is a unicameral, and they only have one chamber, that is the Senate. And federally, the United States Congress also has two chambers, the Senate and the House of Representatives. All 50 states have two federal senators, but have a varying number of representatives in the House, proportionate to the size of its population, but all have at least one. And just to give you an idea, California has 53, while Delaware has one out of the 435 total House of Representatives. Now, although we work on regulations as well, which is a rule created by a government agency, often to actually implement a given law. For our purposes today, we're going to focus on state legislation and the process for how a bill becomes a law. And I think we all know that all bills start with that idea. It's the light bulb moment. What can we do to better protect animals? We then have to identify a legislator who's willing to sponsor a bill on that particular issue. The bill is then introduced, given a number, and referred to a committee. It's posted and passed out of a committee and sent to the floor, which is where the full Senate or the House will vote on the bill. Once the bill passes out of one chamber, it will be sent to the other, where the bill will have to follow the same process of introduction, referral to committee, posting, and passage out of the committee and voted on the floor by the other full chamber. Once the bill passes out of both the Senate and the House, it is sent to the governor. When a bill reaches the governor's desk, he or she may sign it, which completes its enactment into law. And congratulations would be in order. Here's part 2 to all of that. We're going to review the details, as that is where the devil lays, in the details. And the particulars at times can be a bit confusing and perhaps even frustrating. However, this really defines the need for our advocacy work, because there are so many steps and so many ways that bills can go awry. So in terms of bill drafting, we know that only legislators can introduce bills. So we must first find someone who is willing to take the issue at hand on. We find those legislators by researching the various committees and members who may have interest in our issues, and or reach out to legislators that have shown interest in our issues in the past. And once we find a sponsor, we can't rest. That's not the time to rest on our laurels. It's important to show strong support for our issue. We can do this via outreach to additional legislators, asking them to sign on as co-sponsors of the bill. And it's always really important to try to have bipartisan support from both parties. The Animal Legal Defense Fund would be considered a stakeholder in this process. We usually work together with a legislator to draft a bill. It's also customary to have the organizations who have interest in the bill to review that draft and ensure the language will generate the intended outcome. Really important to have eyes on bill drafts, as one simple may or shall could really thwart the bill. So we want to really ensure that it's drafted the way that we intend it to be. And then we have committee assignments. Most bills can't be enacted into law until they've been referred to and acted upon in return from a standing committee in each house. Quite a number of animal protection bills are referred to the agriculture committees, who may not always view our positions favorably, although there have been times, and there are times, when bills can also be referred to judiciary, commerce, environment, or another committee that's more appropriate, which can improve our chance for passage. During the committee meetings, a committee will consist of the chair, members of the committee. The bills are put on the agenda, discussed, and voted upon. But there are times when a subcommittee is designed to do some in-depth work for the committee and consists of only a few members from its parent committee. Most subcommittees are temporary, being created to deal with a single issue or a bill. Now, going back to the committee, that's a time for public testimony, but not all committees allow for public testimony. However, if they do, this is where we all come in. When organizations and members of the public can present written or verbal testimony in support or opposition of a particular bill. Oftentimes, a coalition will work together to coordinate talking points and ensure that we're not being repetitive. For you, just imagine if your legislator is chair of a particular committee or a member of a particular committee where an animal protection bill is up. As a constituent, if you take the time to attend a committee hearing, to testify in person, or call or email the office to ask for your written communication to be heard in committee, it is incredibly powerful. So now to the committee votes. The committee then votes to pass, hold, or vote down a bill. But most often, committee chairs are part of the majority party, and they have a majority of members. If the chair allows a bill to be posted, he or she already has an idea of how it will be voted upon. If they don't have the votes, the bill could be held and can be reposted on another day. Excuse me. There's also the fiscal impact, and a fiscal note is a written estimate of the costs or savings that may result from implementation of a bill. Some states may mandate a fiscal note be attached to each bill, while others may refer the bill to a budget committee for review after it passes through the initial committee. As you can imagine, bills that have low or no fiscal impact are viewed more favorably. And then we have floor votes. So once the bill passes out of a committee or a few committees, depending on the state process, it is sent to the floor for a full vote. We usually have an idea of which way the vote will go based on our conversations with the bill sponsor, who in turn has discussed the bill movement in caucus with his or her peers. But it's always prudent to do a count when you can by calling legislators to ask for their position on the bill and count the yeas and nays. Then we can put a little extra pressure on the legislators who might need to hear from constituents in order to vote our way. Once you do all of that in one chamber and it passes successfully, we have to do the same process all over again in the other chamber, unless you're Nebraska, in which you're finished once it passes out of the Senate. There are times when bills will move at the same times concurrently in chambers. It's not often, but that can significantly speed up the process. And then we have amendments. If there are any changes to the bill that are made in committee or on the floor, it is then sent back to the original chamber for concurrence to agree upon those changes that are being made. Now, once you have both chambers and floor votes, the bill then goes to the governor. It would be wonderful for a governor to sign a bill. However, if the governor does not approve of the bill, he or she may veto it. In the event of a conditional veto, the governor may return the bill with a message explaining the line item objection and suggest amendments. The bill is then reconsidered, and if a simple majority of the members of both chambers agree to make the amendment, it is returned to the governor for his or her signature. But there are times when the line item objections can completely change the intent of a bill, rendering it useless, in which case the veto stands. Another scenario is if the governor fails to return a bill within a specified number of days. In that case, the bill would become a law without their signature. And finally, there are bills that reach the governor at the end of a legislative session. Governors have a specified number of days to approve bills after the session has adjourned. A bill not approved within that time is known as a pocket veto. This is the most conclusive form of a veto, as the legislature, having adjourned, has no chance to reconsider the measure. But all is not lost should your governor veto a bill. There is a chance, depending on the political makeup of your state, that a qualified majority, which is usually 2/3 of the members of each chamber, can choose to approve a vetoed bill, precisely as the legislature originally passed it, in which case it becomes a law over the governor's veto. A veto override, while possible, is not easy. And then we have the enactment of the bill, and it could be immediate. There could be a phase-in time frame, but many bills do begin on January 1st of the next year. So now that you're all experts in the process, let's move on to your role. So many people have a negative connotation when they think of lobbyists, but it really is an essential component of our work. Lobbying in some form is inevitable in the political process. When we think of putting pressure on legislators to influence their decision on behalf of the animals, well, then lobbying becomes a good thing. So who does the lobbying? And that's stakeholders, coalitions such as the Animal Legal Defense Fund and our partner organizations. We are the subject matter experts. We're often responsible for the drafting and the working of a bill to garner support and movement. We bring attention when needed and have media attention as well. And then we have the lobbyists and the contract lobbyists. There's a little bit of overlap on that one, as the stakeholders may also have registered lobbyists, such as my colleagues on the Legislative Affairs program team, or We could hire a lobbying firm, contracting with them to pass a specific bill or work to give us an edge in a priority state on a priority issue. We need to be well versed in local and state politics, understand the landscape and the customs. We have to be familiar with state-specific legislative processes and rules, establish and or have established relationships with legislators. And third, we have advocates, constituents, citizen lobbyists such as yourself. You have arguably the most powerful and persuasive voice, especially at the local and state level, where you can establish more of a personal relationship with your lawmaker and their staff. Now, your role as an advocate is really to participate in the legislative process. Legislative advocacy is truly the most proactive way you can make lasting, impactful change for animals. It does involve research and taking action, which sometimes can push you outside of your comfort zone, but you will absolutely triumph because you're speaking for those who cannot, and oftentimes that's easier to speak on behalf of the animals and make requests that you normally wouldn't do for yourself. But the very first step that we ask you to do is to please register to vote if you haven't already. Your calls and emails are much more effective if you are a voting constituent. Please go to your state's Division of Elections website, or you can use this link for the U.S. Election Assistance Commission. So, you know the process, you're registered to vote, you're raring to take action, but there are a few more preliminary steps that will make you seem like a seasoned lobbyist. If you could, take a moment to know your legislators. A quick search will show who represents you at the local, state, and federal levels. And we have the aldf.org/findmyreps that you can click onto. Look into their legislative voting record and understand their general philosophy. Is it in line with yours? That would really make things much easier. But if they're not, look for other commonalities. Where is their alma mater? Do they have a job outside of the legislature? Are you or anyone that you know affiliated with that occupation? Have they received awards, perhaps in other areas of social justice, environmental or family protection? If you can find some common interest, it really could provide you with opportunities to make a stronger connection. And while you're on their website, please be sure to sign up for their e-newsletter, join their Facebook page, and follow them on Twitter. We want you to be as informed as possible when you have a meeting with your representative. And while you certainly don't have to be an expert, it really does help to know your legislature. So what are your state's legislative session dates? Do they run 2 months, 2 years? Is it annual, every other year? And knowing the legislative makeup, who's in charge? Republicans, Democrats, a mix of both? Does your state have a trifecta where the same party holds the governor's office, the Senate, and the House? That's important to know. And also, how many bills are introduced and passed each session? You could have thousands of bills that are introduced, or there may be a limit on how many each legislator can introduce. This is really good information to know when you're asking for their support on a bill. And you can find all of the most up-to-date information on the aldf.org/state. Insert your state. Don't just put state. I should have highlighted that to note on this slide to see when they're in session, what bills we're focusing on in the state. So again, aldf.org/I live in New Jersey. I would put New Jersey. aldf.org/New Jersey. Please insert your state, and you can look up all the latest and greatest news that we're working on in your state. And then we also want to ensure that you have an understanding of the current laws in your state. We recommend that you begin by reviewing the Animal Legal Defense Fund annual state rankings report. The results might surprise you. Many people assume that we're going to use New York as an example, that New York State is ranked high on the list as it's perceived to be a progressive state and a leader in animal protection. Yet, They were ranked number 33 in 2022. Spoiler alert, Maine is number 1 and New Mexico is number 50. So a lot of work to be done there. And we certainly would be remiss if we did not address and discuss opposition, because there will always be opposition, even on the bills that have overwhelming bipartisan support. The unfortunate reality is that there are industries and individuals who don't want things to change and will continue to abuse animals if we don't enact laws to protect them. Legislators will often ask if we've reached out to opposition to try to find a compromise on a particular issue. Well, the Animal Legal Defense Fund is a pragmatic organization, and we do make that effort. Our communication strategy really depends on our relationship with members of the opposing organization, corporation, or individual, and of course, their reasonableness and the type of legislation that it is. Opposition may come from groups who could support tail docking or the use of gestation crates for pregnant sows, as they're considered routine husbandry practices for farmed animals. Or you may have a local hunting group opposing a ban on wildlife killing contests. It's our job to convince legislators that the issues they champion are publicly supported and in the best interest of their constituency and the public at large. Sometimes that means it may not be necessary to be heavy-handed in our messaging. There are times when a more subtle approach is best to try not to attract direct opposition. So that aside, it's finally go time. Let's schedule a meeting with your legislator. A phone call is great. It's a tried and true way to communicate, or you can ask their offices if they're using video conferences. I think everybody is using Zoom, Skype, Google Hangouts, some sort of video conferencing. The preference these days would certainly be an in-person meeting if possible. But of course, virtual is always good, which allows you to see each other and provides an opportunity to strengthen the initial contact. Now, don't worry if you're unable to use video. Calls are truly just fine. So we do want you to prepare yourself before the call by having the name and the title of your legislator with you, along with any resource material. Have that in front of you. You never know if there's some distraction. You just want to make sure that you have all of your information right in front of you. And so the first thing is to call your legislator's district office and ask to speak to a scheduler. You can simply tell them you're a constituent and would like to request a meeting with your representative to discuss an issue that is important to you. They will likely ask for your name and address. That's normal. And they want to make sure that you're a constituent as well. You may then be transferred to their scheduler, a policy staffer, or even their chief of staff. It is quite rare for a legislator to answer their own phone or be available to speak on an initial call. So if you do have a specific issue or a bill that you would like to discuss, you should also mention it to the staff member so that they can prepare for your meeting, including a bill number, a summary, the list of sponsors would all be super helpful. It's also important if you could provide a few times and dates for the meeting, as a legislator's schedule is likely booked out by a few weeks, if not a few months, depending on the time of year. And don't forget, before you hang up, to ask for the staff member's name, email, and title for follow-up. That's going to be really important, as staff members are your gateway to elected officials. They're the eyes and the ears for the legislator, and oftentimes they are the ones who assist in moving your issue forward. So please take the time to develop relationships with staff to become viewed as a credible source of reliable information on animal issues. Now, we do ask that you prepare for the meeting once you've got it scheduled. It's not going to take long, but it's a really good idea to map out what you're going to say. Re-review the issue. And we do recommend discussing only one topic, limiting the meeting to one topic. State a clear and concise objective, then practice making your specific ask. Stay focused on the purpose of your meeting. Legislators love to talk about other issues, especially if they may not directly support your issue. So be prepared to subtly and respectfully pull the conversation back to the issue at hand. You may find it helpful to write down 3 main points that you would like to make, just so that you can stay on track. And now when practicing your pitch, don't forget to try to tie in their interests with the issue. This is just an example, so as a way to make the ask. If your legislator has a picture of their dog on their Facebook page and you're working on puppy mills, your pitch can go something like this. Senator X, as a constituent, it makes me so happy to know that you care deeply for your dog Fido. I'm here today to discuss an issue that deals directly with the cruelty and suffering that many other dogs are experiencing across the country in puppy mills, which are inhumane commercial breeding operations that prioritize profit over the well-being of animals. Some of these dogs are sold in retail stores right here in our state. A bill has been introduced by Senator ABC, Bill number 123, that would shut down the puppy mill to pet store pipeline by prohibiting the sale of dogs, cats, and rabbits in retail stores. Will you support Bill number 123 by becoming a co-sponsor? And can I count on you to vote yes when it is heard in committee and up for a floor vote? The more you practice saying it, the easier it is and the more comfortable you will be. Having an elevator pitch, having it be super short and to the point is so critical when you're talking to your legislators. So it's the day of the meeting. We don't want you to ever be nervous. You should be super excited because this is your opportunity to participate in the process and let your elected official know that animal protection is important to you. You can also be confident in knowing that we have facts, science, and the truth on our side. Regardless of where your meeting is, again, please have your material in front of you for reference. Legislators understand if you're bringing in a packet or information, that's normal as well. So if you're using it as your cheat sheet, everybody does. That's, you're right on track with any other lobbyist. So we want you to ask your legislators directly if they'll vote the way that you're requesting. Push for a clear answer so you can share their stance with your friends and neighbors and tell them that you're going to do so, that you plan to do so. Let them react to the animal protection issues and that you raise and have a conversation with them. Listen to their comments and their questions and any concerns that they may have, as they will give cues for how best to frame the argument and what additional information might be useful. If you're asked a question and are unsure of the answer, please don't hesitate to say, I don't know. You're at the meeting as a concerned citizen, not as a policy expert. So just simply write down the question and let them know you'll get back to them later. You could reach out to one of our staff members to find out the answer and then get back to them as soon as possible with an accurate response. This back and forth and this continued dialogue also helps to foster a relationship. So that's an important component. And if a legislator does what you've requested, please thank him or her for taking that action. Positive feedback is the most effective way to develop a strong relationship with for future animal protection issues as well. Oftentimes, we pressure legislators to do something, and it's equally as important to thank them for that action. And then while a legislator might agree to vote for a bill when it comes to the floor, to a full House vote or Senate vote, but they don't want to be a co-sponsor for political reasons, that's okay. A commitment for the vote is what we're after. Of note, there are legislators who will not agree with our issues 100% of the time. And for example, a legislator who does not support a ban on wildlife killing contests may be a future prime sponsor of a cat declaw ban bill. So it's important to maintain and always maintain a respectful relationship. Now that you've established a relationship with your legislator and or their staff, It's important to remain in touch. So please send a thank you note after your meeting and outline any next steps that were discussed. Provide additional information if it was requested or answers to outstanding questions. You can continue to periodically check in as well to see if they're following through on their commitment. Did they co-sponsor the bill as they agreed to in your meeting? But it doesn't stop there. As we reviewed earlier, there are many steps involved when passing a bill. Each step is an opportunity for outreach to your representatives in the Senate and in the House. Now, we've had the meeting, you've done your outreach to your legislator. What more can you do? Well, use social media and your connections. This is a major component to the work that we do. Social media is the best tool we have and is the fastest and easiest way to bring attention to an issue. Most of our national politics are taking place on a social media platform. And now that you've joined your legislators' Facebook page and are following them on Twitter, posting on their site is a simple action. And it truly does garner the most attention. Staff monitor the sites numerous times each day, and they may even have immediate notification settings. So they will take note of your message. Of course, we only advocate for respectful posts to thank a legislator who's supportive of an animal protection issue. And while you're online, don't forget to share our action alerts with friends and family, which also brings us to your sphere of influence. So many people don't take a moment to think about their sphere of influence. We have family members and really close friends, but when we start to think about the 2 or 3 degrees of separation within our network, you may be surprised by some of the people that you know. And so we want you to take a moment to think about if, first and foremost, do you have any connections with the governor or state or local legislators or their staff, not only within your state, but any other state? That would be wonderful to share with us. Might you have celebrity connections? Doesn't have to be an A celebrity. It could be a B celebrity. It could be an influencer. It could be somebody who is a celebrity in a local town. All of that, I think, if there's somebody that is sympathetic to our cause and would like to work on animal protection, and we could use their voice to amplify issues, so incredibly important. As well, do you have friends or family in key legislative districts that perhaps live in the Senate President's district, the Speaker of the House's district, perhaps the Ag Chair's district, etc.? And then do you know of any influential community members? Oftentimes, there are folks within the community who play a very large role, whether it's with the church, whether it's a civic group, etc. All of these people, again, could amplify the issue and garner legislators' attention to help move the issue forward. So I want to share with you a few of the issues that we're working on right now, some of the bills, because you are now ready to join us in our lobbying efforts. So a few that I'm going to share, again, these are highlights. This is by far not an exhaustive list. It would have taken the full hour just to talk about the current work that we're doing in our legislative affairs program. But in Colorado, there's a housing bill that's on the move, and it's an omnibus bill that would, among other things, prohibit insurance companies from using dog breed as a determining factor in homeowners and renters insurance policies, and require landlords to contact the local animal shelter if they evict a tenant and a pet is left behind. In Florida and in New York, we have courtroom animal advocate programs on the move. And again, these are not the only states that have a courtroom animal advocate program, but we do want to highlight them. In a courtroom animal advocate program, law allows advocates who are supervised law students or volunteer attorneys to advocate for animal victims in criminal cruelty cases. we are pleased to share that on Monday of this week, this past Monday, the Florida bill passed out of its first committee with overwhelming support. In Illinois and Florida, Florida, Minnesota, New Hampshire, New Jersey, I think I have Illinois in here twice, sorry about that. We have cat declaw ban bills. Both Illinois and New Hampshire have passed their bills out of the full House, and they're moving on to the Senate, which is super exciting. And if you don't know what declawing is, it's a permanent surgical procedure in which all or part of the last bone in a cat's toe is amputated. It can have lifelong medical implications and adversely affect behavior, and is commonly performed for convenience rather than for the cat's well-being. So we're really focusing on those declaw ban bills. In Massachusetts, there's a Humane Protection of Animals Act that contains a collection of provisions that strengthen and clarify Massachusetts animal cruelty laws. It includes provisions to give law enforcement, animal control officers, judges, and district attorneys more options when it comes to addressing situations involving animals before they become life-threatening. And then they can provide pre- and post-conviction options during trial and sentencing. In New Jersey, there's a cost of animal care bill on the move, and that establishes procedures for seizure, care, and forfeiture of animals involved in animal cruelty violations. We are so happy to share that the bill passed out of its first committee late last week. And this bill has been worked on for many, many years. So seeing some movement is super encouraging. And in Oregon, there's a factory farm moratorium on new and expanding large CAFOs, Tier 2 large CAFOs. There have been recent public hearings and work sessions on this issue, and we hope to have more good news out of Oregon on this issue next week. Now, for a more expansive list, you can go to aldf.org, How We Work on Legislation site, and see all of the good state work that we're doing right now. I also wanted to pop a slide in here today. Again, we're focusing on state, but I do want to make mention of the federal work that we're doing because it really is extensive. On this one slide, I just pulled out 4 of the current bills that we're working on. Of course, these are focused on farm animals, the Farm System Reform Act, Industrial Agriculture Accountability Act, Emergency and Disaster Preparedness for Farm Animals Act, and the Protect America's Meatpacking Workers, which focuses on, has some provisions for line speeds. I just wanted to note, again, all of the work that we're doing on the federal level. The process is similar for outreach to your federal representatives, establishing a relationship with them to support all of these bills, but we're also working to protect wild animals and companion animals through federal legislation as well. All right, here we are with a quick recap to get started. It's a bit of research and reading, and then outreach and maintained communication. Please remember to visit aldf.org to sign up for our alerts and receive the latest news. Now, we fully recognize that this has been a lot of information. The great news is that the Animal Legal Defense Fund has an expanded legislative affairs program, and our team now consists of 6 superstars who can answer any of your questions you may have regarding legislation or the legislative process in your state. And I'd just like to provide a quick introduction as we look at this graphic. Kim Kelly, bottom left, is the director of the program. Jennifer Haig, she covers primarily the West Coast and a few other states, including Texas, Hawaii, etc. Stephanie Harris, who covers New England and almost a direct line of Midwest states. Brian Hackett, the tri-state area, as well as Midwest states. Alicia Progoski has not only the southwestern states and a few up at the Finger Lakes, but also handles our federal affairs work, and then myself as well. Please feel free to reach out to any one of us if you have any questions or would like to become more involved in your state work, and or if you have any great connections to share. We truly hope that this information will motivate and empower you to connect with your representatives and build a trusted relationship with each of them and their staff. You are a critical component to the success of all of our campaigns. We greatly look forward to working together to enact significant animal protection laws for the animals. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. What a great presentation. We'll turn it over to some Q&A now. We've already got quite a few questions coming in, but if anyone else has any, please feel free to submit them. First question coming in. With all the issues elected officials get contacted about to support, how can I be sure that your issue even gets heard, seen, or considered? And this questioner is saying, I envision any letter I send getting read by a random staff member and formed response being sent back, never actually being seen by the most influential.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really great question. Thank you for submitting that. Make it personal. Personalize any outreach to your legislator. If you have a particular experience or on an issue, again, puppy mills seems to be the issue at hand that we're talking about a bit today. But any way that you can personalize your message, even if you don't have a direct connection with the issue, but it's heartfelt, and then follow up with a phone call. So if you submit a form email, perhaps through one of our action alerts, research who your legislators are, who they went to, which it'll show you before it actually gets submitted to them on our website. Call them and say, hey, I submitted an email 2 days ago, and I'd like to get a response. Where does legislator X stand on this particular issue? And that's a perfect time to ask to schedule a meeting and just find out where they stand on animal protection. Again, they may be great with companion animals and say, absolutely, I'm with you. But when it comes to wild animals, they may not be in support. And so we really have to ensure that we are in direct communication with them often and maintain that relationship so that when an issue does arise, we'll capture their attention. And by the way, again, if you're friends and family, we're all in this together. I think that's such an important piece and component to this. It's not one organization, it's not one individual that's ever going to solve this problem. We have to come together. And so for you to do some outreach to your friends and family as well, and go in with a handful of constituents, my goodness, if a legislator hears or gets an email or a call from one constituent and says, hey, I have 5 friends and neighbors that want to meet with you, they're going to say, what's going on? Why are 6 people looking to come into the office and talk? And that will really get their attention. So there is some follow-up on your part that could be extremely useful and beneficial. So I hope that helps and that answers your question.
Great. The next one is concerning committees. Who usually sits on the committees?
Well, that depends. It truly depends on the state, on the political demographic. And then there's seniority as well. But there are times that a freshman legislator could be put on a committee based on their geographic location. If they're in a more rural area, they might be put on an ag committee. Oftentimes there's a smattering of both. So you might have somebody from a more urban community that's as well as a rural. And so it really does depend. In terms of judiciary, you're going to have attorneys on the committee by and large, maybe not always. And also the number of committee members varies. So we always do our due diligence and a little bit of background on committee members. So if we're focused on one particular state, and we know most of our bills are going through an environment committee, an agricultural committee, a judiciary committee, we will look at the biography of all of those legislators, and again, trying to see if there's any commonality, if they vote, what their voting record has been. And then we'll reach out to constituents like you and see if there are a few legislators that really could be persuaded by having a meeting with constituents and, really voting by the will of the people.
Great. This next one. If the issue doesn't matter to an official in my state or local government, are my hands tied as to what could be accomplished? Animal welfare is not always on the top of everyone's list of concerns. So how can we change that?
Yeah, another really good question. So I probably should have said this in the beginning. We have to be creative. That's our job. Hitting people on the head, with animals all the time. You're right. It doesn't resonate with everyone. And if they have no interest in animals, we have to make another connection. Do they have interest in the environment? Is this an issue of public safety? We all know about the link, and that those that have committed a crime against animals are predisposed to commit a crime against a human. Well, we're looking to prevent future violence across the board. And so a lot of our issues do that. And so I think just getting creative with the messaging, knowing that legislator, have they supported, again, child welfare, domestic violence is an issue, pet protection orders, that's something that we work on all the time, possession bans, et cetera. So just preventing future violence, cross-reporting, my goodness, that's another a big issue for us, so that a veterinarian can report animal cruelty, and children's services could also report if there's an animal in the house, if there's any neglect or abuse. So I think just ensuring that legislators know this is a community issue. This is not just, it's never just about the animals.
Okay, this next one is about petitions. Do you think signing petitions is effective? I've heard legislators say that they dismiss them and only pay attention to calls, letters, or emails.
That depends on the intent. What is the petition for? Is it just collecting signatures from constituents to say that you all support a certain bill? Well, I think that's very effective. And to share that, and for them to see if you could collect, a couple of hundred signatures, that would be wonderful. I know we're not really focused on regulation today, but for the regulatory process, for public comment, having a petition, having signatures, that's super effective as well. It really depends on the regulatory body, though, what their makeup is and what their agenda is. So we always have to take action. We can never rest. We have to always, if it's signing those petitions, making the phone calls, showing up at meetings, being the gatekeeper to, for legislation, for all of these issues, to be the voice for the animals, we have to try and use every tool that we have. So I think if it's a petition for a ballot initiative or to gather signatures for something greater, that's a larger conversation, because ballot initiatives are quite costly and really need a coalition effort. But if it's a petition on its own for perhaps a local ordinance, yeah, I think that can be very effective.
Can you speak just a little more of the role of lobbyists, pressure groups, and interest groups in the legislative process in U.S. politics?
The role is great. We are a small nonprofit, as I think all of animal protection is in comparison to the massive lobbying that happens federally within the state, and of course locally. Local ordinances are truly our best chance at moving legislation, because you're not going to find those high power lobbyists. Oftentimes, you're not going to find them, at your town committee or your county commission meeting. They could be, but you will find them at the state level. However, there's also a time, there are certain groups in certain states that are known as like the routine opposition. They're going to come out. They're going to oppose every bill. And so we just have to show up each and every time. We have to build a relationship with our legislator. We have to ensure that we can have a rebuttal for each one of their arguments, which we always do. And to know that a lot of it is rhetoric, that they've been saying the same thing for about a decade, if not more, now, talking about slippery slopes, et cetera. So we need to be in the game. We need to be active. We need lobbyists. We have to be a part of the conversation, or we're going to be left out. And that slippery slope is going to work against us. We're the ones that are going to backslide, and we can't have that. The animals need us, and we have to be active and diligent, and and always keep our eyes open, because opposition doesn't sleep, and they do attend fundraisers, and they do support legislators. They're a well-oiled machine, and we have right on our side, but we need a little bit more than that in certain situations, because industries that have been around for a long time have billions of dollars at hand, and we don't. So again, creating those relationships is always so important.
Excellent. Can you reach out to legislators for potential animal legislation in states that you do not reside in, or are the lobbyists restricted to only getting change enacted in the state where they are registered to vote?
Yeah, well, so two different things. One, as a citizen lobbyist, no. The most effective way to lobby is within your own jurisdiction. So whether that's at the local level, within your town, county, et cetera, or at the state level, and of course federally. But when it comes to being an outsider, and you can certainly sign a petition, to say that you oppose something that's happening in another state, but legislators, by and large, are not going to look at that favorably. They'll dismiss it and say, well, they're not from here. They don't know what's going on. And so it's really important that there are people on the ground that work with organizations like the Animal Legal Defense Fund and our legislative affairs managers and our contract lobbyists who we're managing, who are on the ground, who can work with constituents and other organizations to ensure that we're the resource, for the state and the legislators, because we have experience nationally. So they'll listen to us in most states. Some states, such as Texas, I'm just going to say in Texas, you have to be a resident. Or be contracting with residents that have a firm in the state, because you've got to walk the halls, you've got to be at their state house, you have to be a part of their process, and you're not going to be effective if you're not there, or if you're not managing somebody who's there. And I hope that answered your question. I did want to mention one thing, unless we have additional questions.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so just talking about Texas, I was going to put this in and talk about this a little bit during the opposition slide, but I do want to talk about preemption bills. And while so much of our work is proactive, there's a lot of defense as well. And Texas is a great state, and there's been some good things happening there. And but there are 6 preemption bills at the state level. So all of those wonderful, a cat declaw ordinance or puppy mill ordinance or circus ban ordinance, that could all get wiped away with a state preemption bill. There are 6, so they come in different forms. It might not affect each and every animal, each and every aspect of animal protection. But that's 6 bills that we have to spend our time on trying to ensure it doesn't pass, it doesn't move. That's not the only state. There are many other states, a handful of other states that have preemption bills, and also bills that look to backslide on animal protection, whether it's status or wild animals accreditation for animals in captivity. So there's a lot that we have to be on the lookout for, but I did just want to mention that aspect, that takes a lot of our time, as well as passing good laws.
Great. I think this is going to be our last one. We're starting to run out of time. I've had more responses from local and state representatives. However, responses from the feds have been nothing more than form letters with nothing to do with any specifics. Any suggestions?
Absolutely. Same thing applies. Call them. Call their district office. You can certainly call their office in DC, but call their state district office. They work for us. And I must say, again, back to the New Jersey thing, is Senator Booker and Senator Menendez are my federal representatives. And I think we all know how good Senator Booker is on animal protection. So shout out to Senator Booker. But calling their office and ensuring that they know animal protection matters to you and it should matter to them is very important. And you can thank them for their form letter. But ask who, when you call the office, ask who handles animal protection bills. And they'll put you in touch with a specific staff member. Ask what the position is of your legislator. You could ask for their voting history if you want to know about particular issues. Ask what they're co-sponsoring. Ask if they will co-sponsor some of the federal bills, which we can help you with to provide a list right now. But no, it should never stop at a form letter. You should have a relationship with their staff member and they should know you.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to answer all these questions. And thank you to all of our supporters out there for submitting such wonderful questions. You will be able to see a recording of this webinar along with all of our other past webinars on our website. If we didn't get to your question, please feel free to send an email to events@aldf.org and we will make sure to get back to you. And if you'd like Kathleen's contact info, it's right there on the screen. You can contact her directly as well. Please take the survey that will pop up on your screen to help us in future planning. You might need to click on a blue continue button to access it. Our next webinar will be on April 27th, and we'll discuss passing local legislation, and it will take a look at retail pet sale bans. Until then, please know that we appreciate your ongoing support for the animals. Thank you, and have a great day.
Thank you.